Okay, we're going to look at a man now whose name is Simon Greenleaf. You can find him right here, this article. Simon Greenleaf was an American lawyer and jurist born at Newburyport, Massachusetts. We look at him. Greenleaf was named to the Royal Professorship and in 1846 succeeded Judge Joseph Story as Dean Professorship of Law at Harvard University. Greenleaf contributed extensively to the development of Harvard Law School, including expansion of the Harvard Law Library. He was retained as chief counsel by the Warren Bridge Group in the U.S. Supreme Court, case Charles River Bridge versus Warren Bridge, 36 U.S. 420, with the case laid down the rule that public contracts must be construed in favor of states. If we look down here, we see that Greenleaf's principal work of legal scholarship is a treatise on the law of evidence. This is 3 volumes, 1842 to 1853, and which remained a standard textbook in American law throughout the 19th century. He also published a full collection of cases overruled, denied, doubted, or limited in their application, taken from American and English Reports, 1821. He prepared and published reports of cases argued and determined by the Supreme Judicial Court of the state of Maine in 9 volumes. He revised for the American courts William Cruise's Digest of Laws Respecting Real Property, and on and on and on. So one of the works that he did that is particularly interesting was he did something called the Testimony of the Evangelists, where he looked at the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, in specific regarding the resurrection, and he took that information in the Gospels and he applied the same evidence that someone would use if they had information admitted into court. And he subjected that to the same constraints and to the same critique. So let's take a look at this. Greenleaf begins his book by arguing for the need to suspend prejudice and be open to conviction, to follow the truth wherever it may lead us. He cites Bishop Wisdom's evidence that Christianity does not bring irresistible evidence, but offers sufficient evidences for the serious inquirer. He limits the scope of his book to an inquiry to the testimony of the 4 evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, bringing their narratives to the test to which other evidence is subjected in human tribunals. His specific inquiry is concerned with testing the veracity of these witnesses, the truthfulness of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, by the same rules and means employed in human tribunals. Greenleaf argues the case by first inquiring as to the genuineness of the 4 Gospels and ancient writings. Here he applies what is known as the law of the ancient documents rule, stating that every document apparently ancient, coming from the proper repository or custody and bearing on its face no evident marks of forgery, the law presumes to be genuine and devolves on the opposing party the burden of proving it otherwise. Greenleaf maintains that the 4 Gospels do not bear any marks of being forgeries and that the oldest extant copies may be received into court as genuine documents. Greenleaf proceeds to argue that in matters of public and general interest, all persons must be presumed to be conversant on the principle that individuals are presumed to be conversant with their own affairs. On the basis of this legal rule, Greenleaf briefly profiles these traditionally attributed as authors of the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, concerning in the case of John and Matthew, their first-hand knowledge of the life of Jesus of Nazareth, and in the case of Mark and Luke, their intimate personal links with Jesus' original band of disciples. Greenleaf then builds a cumulative case by claiming to cross-examine the oral testimony of the evangelists in their accounts of the death and resurrections of Jesus. Greenleaf develops his case on the basis of the following tests. The credit due to the testimony of witnesses depends upon, firstly, their honesty, secondly, their ability, thirdly, their number and consistency of their testimony, fourthly, the conformity of their testimony with experience, and fifthly, the coincidence of their testimony with collateral circumstances. Greenleaf then argues that the gospel writers can be shown to be honest in their character and do not show any motives to falsify their testimony. He claims that keen observations and meticulous details are related by Matthew and Luke, and he concludes this demonstrates their ability. Greenleaf notes that there are parallel accounts from the evangelists concerning the central events of Jesus' life, and that these accounts are not verbally identical. He maintains that discrepancies in their accounts are evidence that the writers are not guilty of collusion, and that the discrepancies in their respective accounts can be resolved or harmonized upon careful cross-examination and comparison of the details. Greenleaf argues against the skepticism of the Scottish empirical philosopher David Hume concerning reports of miracles. He finds fault with Hume's position about immutable laws from the uniform course of human existence. On and on. Greenleaf sums up his argument with the following plea. All that Christianity asks of men on the subject is that they would be consistent with themselves, that they would treat its evidence as they treat the evidence of other things, and that they would try and judge its actors and witnesses as they deal with their fellow men when testifying to human affairs and actions in human tribunals. Let the witnesses be compared with themselves, with each other, and with the surrounding facts and circumstances. And let their testimony be sifted as if it were given in a court of justice on the side of the adverse party, the witnesses being subjected to a rigorous cross-examination. The result, if it is confidently believed, will be an undoubting conviction of the integrity, ability, and truth. Either the men of Galilee were of superlative wisdom and extensive knowledge and experience, and of deeper skill in the arts of deception than any and all others before them, or they have truly stated the astonishing things which they saw and heard. Greenleaf sums up his argument finally by stating, Greenleaf's treatise on the law of evidence, published in 3 volumes between 1842, according to the study of Gospels, Greenleaf came to the conclusion that the witnesses were reliable and the resurrection of Jesus occurred. So in other words, the fact, looking at the evidence, as you would look at evidence submitted to court, the most logical explanation when looking at it is that the resurrection of Jesus actually occurred.